No matter how violent, depraved, or overtly sexual a video game is, rallying the public in an effort to censor a title will always bring more attention to the game in question. If you tell the gaming audience that they can't play a game, they're going to want to play it.
So tell your folks, buy me, Bonestorm, or go to hell!
Here are a few examples when video game censorship went very wrong. Death Race. If you think public outrage over video games is a modern thing, think again. Exidy's Death Race is a 1976 arcade title in which players zoom around a black and white screen, running over stick figures to gain points. Officially, the creatures are gremlins, but there's little difference between a monster and a normal human being in the space of a few pixels. Death Race wasn't anything special, but once the Associated Press ran an article about it, weirdly comparing the game's digital beeps to the scream of a child, it was off to the digital races. After that, various articles denounced the game as sick and morbid and called for its removal from arcades. The end result? Death Race sold very, very well. And in 1976, Exidy made $3 million thanks to Death Race alone. Exidy released games until 1989, and violent video games were here to stay. Mortal Kombat. Way back in the early 90s, Nintendo controlled 90% of the United States video game market, but it had a powerful rival. Sega managed to create a unique niche for itself by promoting their 16-bit Sega Genesis as a more mature, edgier product than the Super Nintendo, which was portrayed as a family-friendly toy. Enter the notoriously bloody fighting game, Mortal Kombat.
Johnny Cage wins.
After a successful arcade release, both Nintendo and Sega had to make a choice when it came to their console editions: to censor or not to censor. Sega went for blood, albeit in a roundabout way, with an easy-to-remember cheat code to unlock the game's gore. But Nintendo kept it clean. As a result, the Genesis's version of Mortal Kombat sold more copies than its Nintendo cousin, inadvertently proving Sega's point. The Genesis really was the system to usher in the next era of gaming. Night Trap. There's only one reason you've heard of Night Trap, and it's not because the 1992 full-motion video game is any good.
I'm so confused. What's going on?
In 1993, when the United States Senate held a hearing about the effects of video games on players, politicians singled out Night Trap and Mortal Kombat as particularly egregious examples of video game violence.
The second game is Night Trap, which is a game set in a sorority house. The object is to keep hooded men from hanging the young woman from a hook.
Complaints from parents followed, and Sega pulled Night Trap from store shelves right before Christmas, promising to release a censored version down the line. But instead of keeping the contents under wraps, the Senate hearings boosted the game's profile on a national scale. When Night Trap came out for PC and Mac in 1994, Digital Pictures specifically used the controversy as a selling point. The real kicker? The ESRB, which was founded as a direct response to these Senate hearings, rated the upcoming Night Trap remaster T for Teen, appropriate for players 13 and up. Manhunt. Rockstar Games is well acquainted with controversy, being the folks behind the Grand Theft Auto series and all, but despite critics' claims, Grand Theft Auto doesn't force you to run over hookers or innocent pedestrians. For the most part, the only people that you'll have to kill are other criminals. Rockstar's Manhunt is different. Speaking to Games Radar, a former Rockstar employee revealed the game's troubled history, revealing that company employees threatened to mutiny because of the game's excessively violent content, saying, "With GTA, we always had the excuse that the gameplay was untethered. You could play completely ethically if you wanted. Manhunt, though, just made us all feel icky. It was all about the violence, and it was realistic violence." The rest of the world responded similarly. Politicians introduced legislation to fine retailers that sold mature games to kids, and after an alleged Manhunt fan murdered a 14-year-old with a hammer, mimicking one of Manhunt's grisly kills, some stores pulled the game entirely. When Rockstar decided to press ahead with an even more depraved sequel, they didn't even have to do much marketing. As the New York Times noted, Manhunt 2 has received free publicity and media attention it would have never enjoyed were it not for the presumably unwitting complicity of the ratings boards and self-appointed media watchdogs.
It is called Manhunt 2, and we must warn you, there is nothing about this that is not disturbing.
HuniePop. It's not just violence that attracts censors. Sex is a big problem too, especially in North America. Take HuniePop for example, a game that fuses match 3 puzzles with a visual novel, but it also asks the player to seduce a variety of anime women. Succeed, and you'll not only get down with your digital lady, but you'll also unlock some explicit illustrations. Critics begrudgingly agree that it's a good puzzle game, but at its core, it's pretty clearly cartoon porn. While HuniePop is right at home among the visual novels produced in Japan, it's awfully racy for mainstream American outlets, and it's been both banned from Twitch and heavily censored on Steam. But that controversy also generated awareness. HuniePop moved around 540,000 copies in its edited form, which isn't bad for a niche title. Of course, there's a catch. Shortly after HuniePop arrived on Steam, the game's developers released a free patch that restored the hidden content, voiding the Steam-imposed censorship after all. Point: perverts. Postal 2. The difference that censorship made for the Postal franchise is clear. The first Postal received mediocre reviews and didn't make much of an impact, aside from an attempted ban championed by Senator Joe Lieberman. Its sequel, Postal 2, spawned a feature film spin-off, broke sales records, and continues to receive expansion packs and new content from its developer, even though the game is 15 years old. So, what changed? The New Zealand government succeeded in banning Postal 2 on the grounds that the game is designed and has the capacity to allow the players to test how much violence and humiliation he or she can inflict on human beings. Australia refused to certify the game, effectively making it illegal in the country. The Swedish government tried and failed to sue Postal 2's local distributor for selling violent content. All of these things just ended up promoting the game. Postal 2 even received an expansion pack in 2015, and a modern remaster of the first game arrived in 2016. Plans for Postal 4 are reportedly underway, and if history is any indication, it'll freak out people all over again. Thanks for watching. Click the looper icon to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Plus, check out all this cool stuff we know you'll love too.